So in this video, we're going to talk about what the firm's demand curve and, more importantly, what the marginal revenue curve looks like when a firm has market power. So when we talked about perfect competition, we were talking about a setup where there are many firms in the market and they're all selling an identical product. And so the combination of those two assumptions or those two characteristics of the market led to a scenario where the firm's demand curve was a horizontal line at the market price. When we're talking about the other industry types, monopolistic competition and monopoly in particular, when we go to analyze those industry structures, well, now those firms have some degree of market power. So when we're talking about monopolistic competition, which is the first market structure we're going to look at where firms have market power, there you're looking at a good number of firms in the industry, but they're all producing a heterogeneous good. They're all producing different varieties of the good. It's that heterogeneity in the goods, right? The fact that they have different characteristics, which means that if one firm charges a slightly higher price, they're not going to lose all of their sales. So the firm's demand curve is going to be a downward sloping line. And that's what we have in this example here. So in our book, we have this example of sandwiches being sold. It could be like a Panera, it could be a Quiznos, a Jimmy John's, right? And note, it's important to understand, right, when we think about all those examples that I just mentioned, they are all a little bit different from each other, right? It's not just that a ham sandwich is a ham sandwich is a ham sandwich. They're all going to be different, right? Different kinds of bread, maybe different toppings or seasonings that you put on there, okay? They are, right, differentiated goods. They do their sandwiches a little differently. So that if Panera raises its price by 10 cents, it might lose some sales to Jimmy John's, but it won't lose everybody because some people would still rather eat the Panera sandwich. And that's what's reflected here. So here what we have is the demand schedule, or at least part of one, for sandwiches for, so let's say Panera. So at a price of $10, Panera won't sell any sandwiches. At a price of $9.50, it would sell one. At a price of $9, they'd sell two. At $8.53, and so on. So to find total revenue, of course, total revenue is just price times quantity. So we multiply our price times our quantity to get these amounts here. So what is the marginal revenue? So again, remember, marginal revenue is the change in total revenue. Let's do a little refresher here. Change in total revenue over the change in the quantity. And to keep things simple, we just have the quantity going up by one sandwich. So really, we're just looking at the change in total revenue here per additional sandwich. So the marginal revenue, when we go from 0 to 1 sandwich, is $9.50. Right. Now, what do we have here? When we go from 1 to 2 sandwiches, Panera is selling a second sandwich, but in order to do so, they're dropping the price by 50 cents. So we go from $9.50 to $18. And so what is that? That is $8.50. And if so, we go through and do the next one from 18 to 25.50. That's $7.50. Right, from 25 to 32, that is $6.50. From 32 to 37.50 is $5.50. And 37.50 to $42, that's $4.50. And then finally, $3.50 for the 7th sandwich. Okay? So what should stand out to you right away is if you compare marginal revenue to price, after that first sandwich, marginal revenue is always less than the price. So what's going on here? It helps if we kind of go to our demand curve here. Okay. And let's just pick a starting point. Let's go ahead and start at 4 sandwiches, which, if they're selling 4 sandwiches at a price of $8. Okay, so let's just go ahead and start at this point on the firm's demand curve. So in this case, right, that's where the total revenue is $32. What happens if they want to sell a 5th sandwich? And I'm not trying to draw things proportionately here. I just want to make sure we're drawing this so that you can really see what's going on. In order to sell that fifth sandwich, we've got to drop the price from $8 to $7.50. So what does that mean? Look, when they had the price at $8 and we were selling 4 sandwiches, right? So they were getting $8 for each of those 4. Now, in order to sell that fifth sandwich, they've got to drop the price for the other 4 sandwiches down to $7.50. Okay? So it's important. What we're dealing with here is a firm that's charging a single price. There's no what we call price discrimination, which we will talk about later on when we discuss monopoly. This is a single price that the firm is setting. Okay? And this actually makes sense in a lot of settings, right? When you go into a Panera, a Quiznos, or a Jimmy John's, there's a listed price, and anybody who wants to buy a sandwich, for the most part, that's what you pay, unless you got some kind of special coupon or whatnot. And that's a more complicated scenario. We can think about how that affects things. But in the most simple case possible, the firm charges the same price to everybody. So what does that mean? Well, if you take a look over these 4 sandwiches, right? So for each of these 4 sandwiches, the firm is now receiving 50 cents less. Okay? So if you look at what is this area in here, let's highlight this in green, right? Kind of outline this area here. What is this rectangle? Well, that's the decrease in total revenue that comes from lowering the price on the units you were already selling. Right? And so where's that coming from? Well, initially, so if you think about what is our marginal revenue, it's going to have 2 pieces to it. The firm is going to be losing this, right? It's the change in price times the quantity they were already selling. Right? So it's a drop of 50 cents times the 4 sandwiches. And so that's the second piece here. It's going to be our second piece, which is the change in price times the quantity. Okay? The price went down by 50 cents, and they were selling 4 sandwiches. Okay? That's this part here. So this is what they're losing by having to lower the price, but what are they gaining? Well, they're gaining the $7.50 that they're receiving when they sell the 5th sandwich, which is this rectangle here. Okay. And what is that $7.50? Well, that's just the new price. So when we're breaking down the components of how are we getting this marginal revenue, so what are they getting, right, for this fourth sandwich? They're going to get, right, starting off, they had that price of $4, and then they go down to, right, they go from here, right, drop the price to $7.50, quantity goes up from 4 to 5, right, and this is what we're looking at here. We're working on this marginal revenue, the $5.50. So where's that $5.50 coming from? Well, they dropped the price by 50 cents on those 4 sandwiches they were initially selling, but they're getting $7.50 for the 5th sandwich. So that becomes $7.50 minus 50 cents times 4, which is $2, which gives us the $5.50 that we have in our table here. Okay? And so it's for that reason that marginal revenue is actually less than the price. Okay? And so in this case, we'll draw it as being, say, here. So when we're drawing the marginal revenue curve, we could do this exercise at every single quantity. Right? We see that the marginal revenue curve is actually below the demand curve. And this is in stark contrast with the competitive model, where for a competitive firm, right, their demand curve and their marginal revenue curve were one and the same, meaning that for those, right, for competitive firms, marginal revenue was just equal to price. Right? That was in perfect competition. Here, however, you see that marginal revenue is less than price because it's now price minus the change in price times the quantity that was being sold. And so this is our starting point. We're going to use this when we talk about monopolistically competitive firms and monopolists as well. So the next question we're going to ask, as we're working first within the framework of monopolistic competition, is how do firms in a monopolistically competitive setting, how do they determine how much to produce? And as we did for perfect competition, we're going to do this first in the short run and then in the long run.